welcome to Thought Leader Thursday webinar series from Script to Screen. And today I have a very special guest. And it's Mike Ambergy. And Mike Ambergy is the CMO of Adaptive Health. And we've worked together in a lot of former lives, but we work together now. And I thought that, Mike, you could bring a lot of value to this series and to the audience here about direct-to-consumer and what you do at Adaptive Health and who it is and all that stuff. So I'll just stop talking, Mike, and tell me a little bit about who Adaptive Health is, what you guys do, and why is TV such an important part of the success of what you guys do with the brand Nugenix?
Well, that's it. We're a supplement company. We own and manufacture our own supplements. We're a little bit different in that we're not like the millions of SKUs kind of supplement company. We kind of focus on a few hero brands that have a point of difference in the marketplace that we can advertise. Mm-hmm. The company's DNA actually is digital advertising from where the owners started, and they actually had been, affiliates for other manufacturers, supplement manufacturers, and they saw things they didn't like about the way the industry worked in terms of the product quality, in terms of the formulations, in terms of customer service, and they thought they could do it better, so they did. Mm-hmm. Honestly, television wasn't a big part of their initial play, and then and they had dabbled in it a little bit with kind of an all-in-one sort of approach,
right?
And then they one-stop shopping, whatever. And then they brought me in, mm-hmm. and we kind of really focused a lot because that's a little bit of my, we're a small company, or we were a small company, and like everybody had their bigger role, but the thing they directly did. So right. I was CMO of everything, but also kind of the TV guy. Mm-hmm. For a long time. And so what we did is we just really focused on growing that part of the business. And so, now of Nugenix, you may know of Instaflex Advanced. We have other brands like Peptiva, a women's line called Lumiday, multiple products within the Nugenix family, including GH Boost and now a new full potency prostate. So we've really expanded the campaigns out over time. And across multi-channels. So we went from primarily, display and online to, paid social, TV, radio, direct mail. So really multi-channel kind of direct response company. And as a result of that, because we have so much media that we run every day, mm-hmm. And certain people, as you know, are never going to buy direct to consumer, but we create pent-up demand with our media. We've also been very successful in certain retailers such as GNC, Walgreens, Amazon, and more recently even Walmart. So some of the way we've grown over time.
So when companies that may have a similar product offering, or maybe it's a product itself, and they have maybe started the same way in digital and in paid and display and all that kind of stuff. And because we get this all the time, Mike, that's good. It's been good for them. But to really scale and to drive all those other channels, they ask about television. So right. if someone listening today is having that thought process, what is it about television that not only takes it to the next level, and then and how does it support all these other channels? I know it sounds very intuitive to you and I, but I think there's an explanation that could be helpful.
Yeah, not at all. I mean, I think, and it may not be intuitive and true for all demographics, but certainly a slightly older demographic, and we tend to target slightly older demographics, 35, 40 plus. Mm-hmm. That's when supplements become more useful, particularly something like Nugenix or Instaflex. And in my previous lives, maybe high-priced home goods, shall we say, or weight loss programs or things like that. They tend to skew a little bit older, okay. And those of us who grew up in a slightly older generation still kind of, we are absolutely online, we're absolutely on social media, we're all of those places, But I think there's still a certain degree to which if you see it on TV, it's real, right? That's how you separate out the charlatans from the real ones, because once they made it on TV, it's kind of like New York. If you could make it there, you can make it.
I call it the posers from the pros.
Yeah, so they may convert on social media or search or Google Display Network or any of a number of places, email, direct mail, whatever. But there's a certain legitimacy that is conferred on a brand for a certain demographic that runs on TV, and that may or may not be true for the truly younger demographic. And they may have other places that confer that certain legitimacy on them. But that's certainly true for the slightly older demographic, which just so happens to have a lot of disposable income,
and growing every year.
Right. That's the good thing about them; they can afford it.
So when you talk about the fact that there's a certain demographic that it works better for, and probably more higher ticket items, things like that when you talk about disposable income. But what is it about, and I've heard this many times, Mike, that if you're on TV, you're real. It does make a difference, and it does make a difference to your retailers. And it makes a difference to everybody you're doing business with.
Definitely makes a difference to
so tell me about that. So tell me about how that legitimacy going to TV helps with retailers, but how it helps all your other channels.
Well, yeah, so I am familiar with a brand that I had managed that was kind of relatively small relative to another similar size brand, another similar category. And both of them were primarily online brands, both dabbled a little bit in TV, but hadn't really broken free. And as we were able to kind of hit on a core insight and also offer and CTA and all those things that go into it, and really blow up that one brand that with the TV, what we found is that the display, which had been half the other brand when we started, the digital side, not just display, but the digital side, which had been about half the other brand, was now 2 or 3 times the other brand. So what happened is the whole, like you say, all the boats rose basically on that particular. But again, it was a 40-plus brand, and all the sort of boats rose when we were able to crack the nut on TV. Because again, television may not always be your last touch, and you may not have perfect attribution. You may not be able to perfectly attribute. Even with multi-touch attribution models or whatever, you may not ever have full confidence that you've got the consumer path completely down. But you can see at the cumulative level that when television took off, everything else followed. And there was not, everything got easier. So I think, like I said, for a certain demographic, television may not always, and so you have to look at it that way. You have to make sure, one of the challenges that some companies have, particularly, some companies start with TV and then add more online, and other companies have started with digital and tried to expand into television. The companies that start with a really digital presence and expand into TV are very used to backing everything out individually. Like, I know exactly what my allowable is for display. I know exactly what my allowable is for search, and that's what we're going to go to. And I know that because when I look at those orders on an individual basis, they back out at this cost per acquisition. They don't at this. So I know where my allowable is. Television is a little different because it has a knock-on effect, like we just said. So you may have to figure out a higher allowable for television to give you more scale on television because of the knock-on effect down the line. So, like rolling your results up across media channels on occasion and seeing what happens when television runs at this CPA or this cost per acquisition or this one, and you may see that you have a pleasant knock-on effect, and the whole is greater than the sum of the parts.
So when you talk about scaling a business into retail, into the places that you guys have been very successful in television. Can you see the difference if you turn down television, how it affects all of the channels, and can you see the difference when TV's really, really working and how it affects all the other channels, and what does that look like?
Yeah, yes, you can. I'm going to be really honest with you. There's some threshold below which little changes don't have a big difference. They may for Amazon. Like Amazon seems to be very responsive to slight changes in television spend. But what we have seen is that there's a threshold, and I don't know exactly where it is on a spend per week basis, but there's a threshold beneath which you may not feel the impact as greatly at retail, or you may not feel the impact as greatly in terms of making your display or your search programs take off. But if you can get to a scale, and I can't really give you exactly what that number is, then everything gets a lot easier. So it really is about trying to drive efficient scale. If you and we're talking, we're talking. So it's not like the first $5,000 is going to change your life. It's going to have to be a little bit more.
But you definitely, when you specifically you picked out Amazon, but you definitely you realize and see the difference. And when you have retailers, and you said to yourself, they love TV, they want that. Why is that important to a retailer, and what does TV add to retail sales in addition to those direct sales that you're making?
Yeah, well, so this kind of goes back to the old branded days. So TV is a great awareness driver. And so when people come to the stores the retailer would love you to tag your spots with their logo and drive people to the store. Of course, that's not necessarily the best thing for driving your efficiency on a DTC level all the time. I will admit we have done it, but we have done it as a claim versus as an available ad, right? But by the same token, even if you don't mention the retailer anywhere in there, when people are in their stores, they see your brand, they saw that ad, and they realize that they were interested in it, but they just didn't buy. So the worst place for the best example of this for me is Bed Bath & Beyond. I don't know if it's still like this. It's been a while since I've gone in, but they have that wall. They used to have that wall. When you walked into a Bed Bath & Beyond, they had all the direct response products, right? And these were all the things I saw on TV but didn't buy. And I could not get by that wall without buying at least 5 of them. And some of them hadn't been advertised for years, right? One of them hadn't been advertised since you and I were on a shoot, and the gentleman that advertised it, unfortunately passed away. And it was years after that I walked into, and I bought it. I go, I just saw this on TV, and then I realized it had been 3 years. I couldn't have possibly seen it on TV. But you just have that kind of, I'm interested in that. I'm not going to do that. But then you see it, and you have that, and you buy it. And that's why retailers, they know that brands that are advertised on television move better than brands that don't off the retail shelf. They don't know why, perhaps, but that's
so. Let's go back a little bit in time when you were onboarded, Mike, and they sought you out. Let's talk about. So they had a successful company. There's no doubt. At that point, it was a different name, but it was a successful company. And then, how much bigger did television make this company with their products? Before it dabbled in it, but weren't really experts at it, or in some cases weren't even doing it.
Well, yeah, it's hard. Yeah. I mean, first of all, I can't tell numbers.
A lot, or a little.
A lot. But the harder part is how to answer that question, because it is true that as we scaled television, our business doubled, right? But it wasn't TV alone. It was because it went, everything else went up too, and so it became a chicken or the egg thing. I think in retrospect, we have seen that television had a big influence in that, an outsized influence in that, by things that happened, recently and subsequently. You get a better feeling when, when things get hard on television, you kind of go, "Whoa!" Now I see the impact that really had, and so, but I don't know that I would attribute it all to that, but certainly it was a catalyst, and just being able to be flexible on other and take advantage of the situation as we saw things get easier in other places and really lean into it had allowed us to grow a lot. So I wouldn't attribute it all to television by any stretch of the imagination, but definitely I think I would say that was being able to scale television.
Yeah,
as the
and I talk about it as, maybe there's 4 or 5 boats in the harbor that are just kind of moving along, and then this tugboat comes up and hooks all these other boats up to the tugboat, and it starts moving, and everybody starts moving. And that tugboat, for parallel purposes, is television. When that is happening, and the business is growing and growing and growing, is it part of, when you talk about the digital and talk about all this other stuff you're doing, and I call it, and we always call it, this be everywhere strategy, because we do have a journey. Everybody has a journey every day. We wake up within 15 minutes, we're on our phone when we wake up, right? I'm sure you are, right? You probably check your phone 150 to 300 times a day. And then but as a society, we seamlessly go from one platform to the next. We see TV, we're on radio. Talk about how that be everywhere strategy is so important to what you're doing, and that cohesive message is so integral.
Well, yeah, because I think we said that, for example, television isn't always your last touch medium. So you got to find, and television is changing. I mean, television in the last year has changed, in the last 6 months, has changed as much as I've seen it in 35 years change. And, if I had a nickel for every time somebody told me television was dead since the late 80s, I wouldn't need this job. But the reality is it never died, it just changed, and we've been able to adapt with it. It really feels different now. And I think the last year and everything that we've gone through has really had a dramatic impact on even the television generation. The older generation is catching up. And yet the demand is still unprecedented. So you've got lower viewership in a lot of ways than we've ever had, particularly amongst men. And yet the demand for the inventory is higher than it's ever been, maybe because a lot of that money sat on the sidelines for the last year, or maybe because things are opening up and people want to know, the companies want everyone to know they're open. I don't know, but so you've got this weird thing where viewership's going down and rates are going up at the same time, which is not supposed to happen. Yeah. But it is. So, you kind of have this really tough environment right now, but you really see that you can't be, I don't mean to take a different opinion in you, but you really can't be everywhere, right? Because everywhere is a lot of places. So you got to know where your customer is, where your target audience is. So my target audience may not be all over TikTok right now, but they're certainly all over Facebook and maybe Instagram. And so, and they're still doing pre-roll. They're not maybe watching cable news, but they are perhaps consuming it on websites and pre-roll and things like that. So kind of knowing where your target is and where you're going to get the bang for the buck, and also where's favorable media environments and favorable advertising locations for your particular product. Not every product works on every platform equally well. I think that's one of the most important things about television is it's great to be on television, but what are you going to say when you get there, right? Think about, do you have a television brand? Do you have a product that, as a wise man told me many, many years ago, they call it television for a reason. Is there something to see, or can you manufacture something worth seeing from selling your product? And that's true. That's true with Facebook and YouTube and all these other video-oriented products as well. It's really becoming more and more important to figure out how to make something visually interesting, out of what you're selling. That's really easy if you're the guy with the glass bottom boat and the glue that you can just stick it together and watch it float. Those are easy demonstrating. You and I have done in past lives some really interesting demonstrations that are made for TV or whatever. It's a little harder for some products to make it as engaging, as interesting, as demonstrable. The benefit is demonstrable on television or any of these other video formats,
right?
Than it is for some other products. So
it's a challenge, but also it's a skill, right? It's really a skill from an expertise how to really craft that visual story to get people to understand that there is something unique about this product or service, right?
And that's I've certainly been asked to create to do exactly what you're saying. Been asked I want to put my brand on TV, or I want to put my product on TV. How do we do it? And it's like, well, first we got to figure out why someone would buy your product in preference to somebody else. What's different about it? What's interesting about it? And then how do we visualize that? Because you've got to show it. You can't just say it. Now there are other ways to visualize it, and we've been talking about that just recently. It may not always be a product demonstration. Yep. There are other venues for doing it, but you have to have some. Before you buy the media, you kind of need to have some plan, some point of difference, and I think that's what really blew up Nugenix. Really is we really. I mean, there are a couple of things, but one of the more important things was looking at where the market was at the time and what we were selling compared to what men were thinking and men wanted, and that one, even though our formulation was different, so that's part of it too. Even though the product formulation was different and better than a lot of the products out there, that's not what made it work, because that may be the landing page, but that's not the television ad. So the television ad,
right? Yeah, it's too hard to understand at that point.
But changing the positioning to really have a better insight of what the target audience wants, and really who the target. I think it really starts with who the target audience is. Like, what is it? Really having that insight about that target audience that makes all the difference. Because you can talk to people differently if you could really describe them, what they're thinking, what they're feeling, what they're wanting, as opposed to just saying men 40 plus. Like, men 40 plus that, and what comes after that's really important because it will change how you message it. And if you can get that part right, the messaging becomes a lot easier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's that, and you and I have found this to be the path for success for many years, and we continue to do it on a daily basis, is that when you can tell that story that gives that consumer the reason to believe this is different to solving their problem, that's really the golden ticket, if you will, right? If there's 5 other products out there, but I know this one has this because I was educated that it does something different, the chances of me migrating there are a lot better.
And understanding your place in the market. You and I worked on a certain household products, cleaning product a few years ago, right?
Yep.
And once we admitted that was going to be nobody's first vacuum cleaner, because it just isn't going to be. And so to use that example, we're targeting women, 40 plus with significant disposable income who are sick and tired of buying a new vacuum cleaner every year because it breaks. Right?
Every year.
And if you can say that's the demographic, I'm not trying to get everybody. I'm not trying to be everybody's vacuum cleaner because I'm just not going to be. But if you're sick and tired of that, for those people, and you have to have, you've had to have that experience to really appreciate what. Suddenly, if you don't have that experience, you don't appreciate the messaging. But if you have, then you're going to. That's gonna be right where you're at, and so those kinds of things make the difference.
And that really came down to a durability and a weight message, right, for that demographic. And to your point, you don't need everybody, but if you get that right, it's a healthy business.
Yeah. Right.
Right.
Not going to be everybody's,
Yeah.
but you need to figure out whose you are. And
Yeah.
and
Whose
really,
you
where
are.
do you fit in the marketplace? I was, it's more than once I've been part of a brand where we had to recognize, all these people we think are competitors may not be. They are low priced starters, right? And most people are going to fail at this. They're actually feeders. They're actually what what people have to go through before they're ready for us. And our segment of the market may not be huge, but it's also not static. There's always going to be these people coming in who have had these experiences with these other products in the category that were unsatisfactory, looking for the benefit that we've got. That's not always true. I mean, that's not true for Nugenix. Nugenix wasn't that way. It is probably a first product in the category. That one was more about positioning to something, really understanding what men are thinking about the situation they're in, and how do you reach them in a way that, frankly, doesn't make them feel bad, but good, right? That's a complete flop from where we were at.
Exactly. Exactly. Typically, to your point, it's a complete flop in this way. Is that we're giving guys hope.
But I mean,
giving
but
them
my
hope.
point is, I guess my broader point is you have to find a difference. So maybe it's flipping the positioning from what everybody else is doing. Maybe it's understanding your place, your segment, your segment in the market, and stop trying to be everything to everybody, but really be everything to that group that loves you, knowing that others, it's not a static group, right? Knowing that if you understand the market dynamics, that that segment that appreciates you will constantly grow, changing. New people will constantly be coming in. It's not a 1 year short-term thing. But the biggest problem is to try to be all things to all people, and you end up, the rest of the saying.
Yeah. But I want to repeat what Mike said for the audience here, because he says something very, very insightful, and that you don't have, just because you have a product or a service where there's a lot of competitors, they may not all be your competition, because they're maybe not solving the specific problem you can to a certain audience. So the further you refine that message, the better off you are to really take on competition, because you'll keep them out simply by defining that.
Yep, absolutely.
So going back to the digital and television thing is, and we're working on some things now that are really, really interesting for different platforms, in addition to television, and it talk about the importance of it's contextual content at scale, meaning contextual to the platform, because it may not be that Instagram may not be the same message on TV, but if you get that message right that's contextual to that platform, and you get the message right on television that's contextual to that platform, and you do it together, that's an at scale message, right?
Yeah, well, I would even go back a level and go, and without giving away secrets, even on television, when you need to be contextual on television too. When we started in this business, magazines were a big deal, right? And somebody described to me the single and only purpose of a magazine used to be to collect a bunch of like-minded people in one publication so they could be advertised to. And so you had very narrow focus of most popular magazines, right? Well, that became what TV networks were, right? And that was the big change when cable and satellite came along, is that they became the new new magazines. You have very narrow food networks, or
Motor Trend,
History Channel, things that have a narrow focus and attract a like-minded group of people to be advertised with. But if you think that the Hallmark Channel and FX are going to work with the same ad, you're probably wrong.
Right.
And so that's, you need to be contextual even on television, but certainly when you get to other platforms to understand how
Yes.
people consume them. I mean, Facebook is a great example. How do people consume Facebook? They scroll. They scroll mostly on
Yep.
their mobile device. So if you've got an ad in there, what's the first thing you got to do?
Got to catch your attention.
You got to stop the scroll, right?
Yep.
And so that's a little different. I mean, we always talk about a hook in TV, but it's not the same as stopping somebody from doing this. So, that environment's a little bit different. You have to have a different approach if you're trying to do that. We talked about YouTube is a little different too. You got 10 seconds. Like, what is that person there
Right.
for? Before you can hit skip ad, is that person?
But exactly,
Yeah.
but to your point earlier, Mike, why are they there? It's a search engine.
Right.
It's a search engine. Yeah, entertainment's part of it, but they're looking to find out something.
Yeah.
So simply by that definition, the context of what you're producing needs to be the answer to what the question they're looking for.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, that's a combination of right. That's where being close to the media buyers is also important, right? I mean, there are too many shops that probably keep media buyers over here and creative team over here, and the media guy's job is to buy the media for the ad that the creative guys give them, right? And never the twain shall meet. You don't talk to me about creative, and I don't talk to you about buying media. But the reality is that doesn't work, because
Right.
if you don't know where the media is going to be purchased, then you really can't create the right creative.
Right. I subscribe to that 1,000%, because there's stuff that we've done, Mike, on YouTube that in the first 5 seconds I'd never do on TV.
Right.
And there's something on television I'd never do on YouTube, yet they both work.
Right. Yeah.
Because it's contextual to the audience, to where they're at.
Yeah. Contextual to the medium, exactly.
Yeah. So you kind of talked about this a little bit, but I'd love to get into a little bit about if somebody's thinking about direct to consumer, they're thinking about scaling their business from digital, or they have been in television and scaling it even more. What are the things? What would you say the most important things are for them to take into consideration as they start to get information on this specific category and this message?
Well, so do we know what the message? I mean, we've got that all kind of locked in, because I would say the first thing is it a televisionable message, right? Is it something that plays well on TV? Not everything does.
Right.
Do you have an offer that will play well on TV, right? The old thing from the good old days of direct mail, list, offer, creative in that order and no other, is not completely wrong. I think in TV the list comes more from the demographic, but the creative and the offer are equally important. And having something that you've got a thesis on for why this will work on television, as opposed to everything works on TV, because it just doesn't.
Right.
And so we talked about that. Can you make it a visual message,
Right.
and can you have a compelling offer? The other thing that's really, really important is that the goal of a direct response television ad is not to sell them the product. And this is the thing we always forget. It's really just to get them interested enough to take the action you've asked them to take. Go to the website, call
Right.
the number.
And whatever that action is. Exactly.
Right. And so one of the problems that we run into a lot, and I fall into the trap more than I'd like to, but I see a lot, is people trying to do everything in the ad. And you don't have to do everything in the ad. You just have to do enough to make them take action. And then it's up to whatever your next action is, whether it's your call center, your website, whatever that is, to convert them. And give them, like we said, why the down and dirty details of the product formulation and why it's better, or all that kind of stuff. But you got to at least get them interested. So you need to know what it is, that what what benefit do they want? Don't get stuck in the features. And how do you visualize that? And how do you make that come to life for them in a way they just got to have it, or they just got to find out more anyway?
Yeah. All goes back to that. What's in it for me, right? Stop talking about yourself, pounding on the chest. What's in it for your consumer? Because, Mike, one of the things that we talk about, and you know this, is that when we're working with our clients, we go through a specific process of these, this hierarchy of things that you have to accomplish. And at the end of it, like, we have 11 things, and the last one is make it simple. Right. Because if you can put 10 pounds of potatoes in a 5-pound sack, and you're not going to accomplish anything. And you can't worry about, did I tell everything? Because your point is get that action and provide them more information at another point than they could ever want, but you got them there.
Right. And it's hard because you have a great product. It's got these 7 great, claims that you can make. You've got these great claims. You want to stuff all 7 claims into the ad.
Yeah.
And it becomes an avalanche of words, and nobody knows what the point was, right?
Yeah.
Why do we, So it is, and I do it too. I've recently done it. It's about rolling it up to what you say, what's in it for me,
right,
at the upper level that is intriguing enough, combined with the offer that you're making, that I'm willing to take action on the CTA that you gave me.
Right. So I just want to, Mike just, kind of broke that down. So do you have something that unique and something that you could tell? And is it, can you make it visual? Can you communicate that? Is that televisionable, if you will? Having the right offer, really getting an understanding of the right offer. And Mike, I don't want to get too deep in this, but offer means a lot of things. It means, like, for what you're doing, you're driving to a free trial. Some people are driving to sell a product, but the offer is going to make the campaign work because you can get an average order value up, so you can spend the more media, because if you were just doing it on the product alone, it probably wouldn't work. So those financial things that is just such a huge monster to cover, and we're not going to do that here, but the point, the financials of it are so important, and understand how you can make an offer that will allow you to spend money to build this brand.
Right. I mean, and it kind of depends on what is the product and what does it cost. And if you're selling a $2,500 piece of fitness equipment, maybe I've certainly seen one recently that's been able to do it, but maybe you're actually talking about a 2-step process. Maybe you're just, maybe we're not going to go right to buy it. Maybe we're going to get more information, right? Mm-hmm. Get the information kit, and in the 2-step process, you now have, you've gotten them to at least do that. That's a free information kit, is something I can take away from this ad. I know that's a multi-$1,000 piece of equipment, but I'm interested in more information, and maybe that's all you get. So it's sort of a lead gen kind of thing that you clean up down the line. If it's a much lower cost product, then maybe you have to figure out, but it's premium to other products, then like you say, we have to figure out what the offers are, and that's pretty easy to look within the category and seeing kind of what other people have done, or in similar categories and seeing what other people have done, and then it's a matter of testing it, right? And we've certainly done a lot of that, and then also seeing how it backs out, what the financials are. We tried to do recently a low-priced product, not one of ours, but I was working on a low-priced product that was also premium in the category. It was really tough. We must have tried 5, 6, 7 offers, but you just have to be creative until you find one that has the right combination of response and conversion, right? And AOV, right? Those are the 3 things. A long time ago, somebody told me there's really only 3 things in this business. There's really only 3: response, conversion, average order value. Once you figure those 3 things out, there's all kinds of different ways you can look at them, But those are your three variables. Those are your levers to pull. When you get them all working, it's like when you get them all working, it's like having your woods, irons, and putter all working at the same time. It never happens, but when it does,
And then you're 50 years old, Phil
Mickelson.
Mickelson, and you win the U.S. Open.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, where we kind of start, Mike, is, and you'll understand this because you're so far ahead of the game when it comes to what you're doing, but we got to look at does this make financials? Can we make this make financial sense first?
Right. That's the first step.
And then get into the creative, because if that doesn't work, I don't care what creative you have, but if you've got the financials out and you don't have good creative to make it run, right?
Right, exactly. If you can't pro forma it at the beginning and figure out, what it would take to back that out at a reasonable, cost per acquisition for this type of product, and then you ask yourself, is that even possible? Right? Could I even do that?
Mm-hmm.
And the answer is maybe no in some cases, and maybe it's not the right thing. Or, we've seen brands, I've never been part of it, but we've seen brands that, for better or for worse, don't really expect to back out their television. They even within the direct, that they're really using it as a drive to retail kind of strategy, but still using a DR ad, a direct to consumer ad. And I described it, and this was years ago that and I won't name the brand because they've since changed, but they were very successful at using, at least from me looking from the outside in, at using a true DR ad, but really having a strategy of drive to retail. So, and I surmised what they were doing is using the response, the small amount of direct response
generated
or orders they were getting, as almost sonar, almost like looking for schools of fish, right? If you're a deep sea fisherman, you're going out and you're trying to find that school of fish. You may only pull 3 or 4 of them out of there, but if you pull 3 or 4 out, there's like thousands down there. So just keep hitting that media intersection that's delivering the most efficient, even though it's not efficient enough to back out, the most efficient orders for you, and you'll probably see your retail numbers go up. And I've never done that, but I've certainly seen others do it, and that's another option too. If you just really can't back it out on a DR basis when you look at the math, but you believe that you could drive significant retail with your television ad, instead of just doing a branded buy, a cost per thousand buy, like big packaged goods companies do. Another option is to use Drs Sonar, and just kind of see where the fish are, even though you're losing money on your TV. And then in that case, you might combine your revenue from all channels, including retail. Now, we don't do that. I have not done that ever. I kind of tend to look at try to make direct profitable on its own, knowing that the cherry on top is the retail sales it drives. But certainly you can consolidate your retail volume in with your direct volume, and if that's working, if that's backing out profitably, that's another way.
Yeah, it comes down to understanding your KPIs, and sometimes they have to switch, but there are ways to make it work in your favor. Hey, Mike, I want to thank you very much. I've taken a lot of your time, and I think the information you've given is absolutely fantastic. I love the Drs Sonar. That's amazing. I love that. Again, thank you very much. And for people who are watching this, the information Mike just dumped on us is priceless and decades of experience. So use it cautiously, but use it to your best abilities. Well, thank you very much for joining our webinar series, Thought Leader Thursday. Before I get into answering some of the questions that you all had, I want to talk about our next webinar coming up, and the title of it is "Don't be shy about telling your
company or your product story. And I interviewed a gentleman by the name of Ian McLean, and Ian McLean is a director in Los Angeles, and he's launching a beauty brand called Shy Girl LA. And we had this conversation going back, and he's getting into the direct-to-consumer category with his cosmetic product. And I mentioned to him, because I saw some of his stuff that he was doing on Instagram, and I contacted him and I asked him, tell me where the genesis of this product came. Why do you exist? What's the white space that you are, you're taking up and who you're marketing to? And it was an interesting conversation because, he didn't really have an answer. And I said, would you be willing to be on a webinar with me? Because I want to dissect that. And it's really interesting about, he held back a little bit about why the product came about. And as I talked to him, we kind of pulled out that the story of this product is super, super compelling. And it gives him the ability to talk about and sell products in the cosmetic space where he didn't think he really had any permission to do. He has a great product, but he has such a unique story from a director's point of view, from art, from cosmetic estheticians and cosmetic and makeup professionals on set. And I'm not going to give it away, but the way that his story has come about has everything to do of how he is going to launch his product now, how he's going to differentiate himself from the competition, because we all know beauty is extremely, extremely competitive. And now that he's found his voice and he's stepped back and said, wow, I think I have permission to do this, I'm so excited about what it's going to do for his business. But the process that we went through in this webinar will be really good for a lot of people because, and maybe yourselves watching, because when you can dissect the why you exist instead of just what it is you have, you can create such a different connection with your consumer, and eventually that'll make a lot of difference when it comes to sales. So don't forget to join us for that webinar coming up. And to do that, just click on the pop-up on your screen to register and you'll be signed up. So let's go through some of the questions here, because there were some really good questions. And you learned, and I said at the end of this, there's a lot of really good, valuable information from Mike. Mike is one of the premier executives when it comes to direct-to-consumer marketing. I've known him for CMO from three different major companies, and he was gracious to be on this with us, and we do a lot of work together with Nugenix. But the things he talked about are really, really foundational and fundamentals that you should be thinking about with your product or service, that maybe why you tuned into this webinar. So that was really valuable information. I was kidding him because to have an hour with Mike Ambergy and the experience and expertise he has, when I say priceless, I'm not just throwing a word out there. It's literally hundreds of thousands of dollars of consultation that he's had a lot of experience with, that I hope that you guys recognize that there's tremendous amount of value and information in that interview. And I was glad that we can bring it to you. So I'm going to back up a little bit. And there was a question earlier from Dan, and he talked about that he wanted to get into pricing in the webinar. And so Dan, if you're listening, and I hope you are, there's a couple of questions I have for you. So when you say pricing, is it the price to do a campaign? Is it the price that you should be using on television to drive sales? So there's a lot of, it's an open, just open up that wound a little bit. What you mean by that? So let me give you some answers on both of those. When it comes to pricing, about what it would cost to do something like this, it really depends on what you're trying to accomplish, right? Are you trying to accomplish awareness? Are you trying to accomplish direct sales? Are you trying to get direct sales and drive retail? How long does it take to tell the story about your product or service? Can it be done in a very short and effective way? Are you willing to go outside of just TV and support it in digital? I'm sure you are, because that's the world we live in today. So that's before I throw out any numbers, and it would really not be responsible for me to do that because I don't know what your KPIs are. What is it you're trying to accomplish? So take that for what it is, and we'd be glad to contact you and to, with your permission, to get into that if that's as of interest to you. So the other part about it is, I'm assuming pricing in terms of what is it you're going to be offering your product on television or wherever you're going to market it. So at the very end of the webinar, I think you heard that you have to know your business case. What's the financial feasibility of actually doing this? Are your cost of goods such that your creative and your media can drive enough calls, enough clicks to get an average order value up high so you can spend more media? Are you talking about, customer acquisition costs? So your pricing of your product has everything to do with what your key performance indicators are. So if it is a customer acquisition cost, you have a little bit more flexibility in your pricing, providing that your cost of goods allow you to do that. If it is an average order value, if you have a lot of upsells that you can add on to the sale of that gets that average order value up high, you have more flexibility in where you place your media, the dollars you spend, to meet those key performance indicators. So it kind of goes back to depends on what you're looking for, what your cost of goods are, and where you can survive in that ecosystem of, what's the, cost of goods, what's your budget, who's your audience, what's the potential of that audience, and then is it cost per acquisition or is it cost per order? So those are the kinds of things that you have to think about. So I can't just throw out pricing, but I will throw out that make sure your cost of goods are at least 4 to 5 times what your price is that you're asking. That's a good indicator of where your pricing should be when you're putting that offer on television or on digital. So I hope that's helpful. Okay, so next question was, let's see, did we record it? Yes, that interview was recorded. I interviewed Mike about a month ago, and we're currently on projects together. But everything we're doing right now is live, so if you have any questions you want to ask now's the time to do it. So Sunita says, what attributed to their TV success that allowed scaling? Connected TV, DRTV, or were there any specific strategies they've implemented? So when it comes to, that's a good question, Sunita. So when it comes to Nugenix specifically, I can't give private information as you can imagine, nor would you want your private information given out in the webinar. But I can tell you this, is that what attributed to their ability to scale was that their model is such that they're looking for a customer acquisition cost. And if that customer acquisition cost meets what their key performance indicators are to do that, it gives them the ability to try different offers. So the offer that we've been doing with them with Nugenix is a trial offer. Try it, and there's an add-on with it. And then if you like it, you're going to be put into a continuity program. And then the lifetime value of that continuity program determines how much media they can spend and what their average order value is and customer acquisition cost, like I was saying before, it determines that. So because they've been able to be successful with a trial offer, television was extremely successful because it did a couple of things. It drove sales at GNC. It drove sales at their other retailers, which they liked, the other retailers liked. It gave them the ability to introduce Nugenix to the world on television. Now, Mike said this earlier, and it's an instant credibility when you're on television. That's not just my opinion. It's not theory. It's fact. And I've seen it happen over and over and over again for the last 35 years. And it continues to happen that way. specifically today, you think about how many times are we targeted on Instagram or Facebook for a product we've never heard of? And then, you're kind of buying into it, you're not kind of buying into it. But then when you see it on television, it becomes real. And then now you're retargeted in different ways. So television was extremely important for Nugenix. Of course, they do a very thorough and deep marketing and direct-to-consumer marketing on digital. And they try some other things that you'll be seeing in the future that I can't mention, but it's just other verticals that need to be in that are, as I said, they are contextual to the platform. So, connected TV is different. Although the attribution is a little like digital, it's still, connected TV has not really been an effective channel for direct-to-consumer products in general, as it is, at least the ones that we've been working with. But it does get you the ability to get specific to your audiences and to have some attribution costs, but attribution information. But the challenge is that there is, and I'm just going to unfold this a little bit because we're going through this right now with a couple of our clients. When you talk about connected television, yes, you have a specific audience, but there's an attrition rate that happens when somebody is watching, let's say, Hulu or Netflix or whatever that's connected, and they keep seeing the same ad over and over and over again. The opt-out rate of that ad is extremely high. And the attention span is even more minute when it comes to connected television based on the experience that we've had. So you have to start thinking differently about connected television. You can't just, you can, but we don't recommend that you just take your television commercial or a digital commercial and just throw it on connected television. What's the mindset of that consumer? How are you going to catch them differently in that mindset where they specifically went on to that connected television channel and they did that on purpose? It was very intentional. That's different than the mindset of somebody on television and something pops up that hopefully is of interest to them within the program that they're watching, which is different from digital where you're being retargeted. You're not necessarily saying, I am interested in this product. People are putting products in front of you that you have basically given the information away through algorithms that I might be interested in something like this. So there's a whole different psychology to how you have to teach, how you have to reach these consumers and how you have to communicate them depending on that. So connected really hasn't been part of their success. Television has absolutely been the biggest part of it. And, so are there any specific strategy they implement? Yeah, the specific strategies that they implemented, and it's not a secret because if you're following Nugenix or you see it, you know that you're going to be retargeted on social media. You're going to see it on television. The television is going to have a trial offer with an incentive. Those three strategies alone are very specific to why they're successful. And on top of that, the fourth strategy is they're very intentional with their creative on the platform specific to that certain audience. And I hate to see this happen. And we're seeing less and less because we really guide our clients to do different things. Is you can't just assume that television commercial you've made and you spent money on and it's been successful on television. You can't just assume you can throw it on Facebook or throw it on Hulu or throw it in some other digital advertising and it's going to work. After a while, your consumer is going to say, what else do you have? You keep sending me the same thing. And outside of television, the ultimate opt-out on television is to change a channel. But in digital and connected, you can skip the ad or you can just click out. So you have to think about those things when you're creating your creative for your product. So I hope that answers your question, Sunita. So Tom asks, for a product available at brick and mortar, Amazon, DTC, Amazon and DTC, what's the best CTA text tag to support retail shelf and optimize media spend? That's a great question, Tom, and obviously you're very educated and you're obviously a professional in this business. So I can give you specific examples from what we've been involved with. So there is a product called Viviscal, and Viviscal is a supplement for women for thinning hair. And so what we do with that is we give retail tags at the end of the commercial, but we also have KPIs that we want to get on the front end so we can afford to continue to use those television commercials to drive retail. The difference, and here's the difference, is that the tag needs to be a little bit different because, and for the people who don't know that what Tom's talking about, the tag is going to be, is this available at Amazon? Is it available at Target? Is it available at GNC? Whatever, that's a tag at the end of the spot. So that's important because if you want to drive people to Amazon, that's good for your Amazon sales. If you want to drive people to the retailers, that's good for the retailers, and it tells your retail that you're supporting them. But also you have to understand what is allowable for you to spend and get back immediately from a direct sale, and how you can take the attribution from these retail channels and decide whether that was profitable for you. So one way to do that is you make an offer that's unique to television, but the brand awareness is on Amazon or is at retail. So for example, if we say that you can get Viviscal, for just $59.99, but if you take action now, we're going to add 20% off, or we're going to do something to incentivize you that you're not going to do in those other channels. So that gives the ability for someone to say, well, I can get it at Amazon, but I'm not going to get the 20% off, or I'm not going to get this other product. So I'm going to buy now. And that gives you return on investment right then and there, but you still get that halo effect at the retailers. Now, from that point on, if they love the product, and they may just go directly to Target or GNC or somewhere else at that point, but that's okay because you've already made that, you've created that consumer on a great product and they love it. So you have to think about what is the offer you can put together that's unique to what you're doing on television, but also allows you to tag other retailers, that lets them know that you're supporting them and you're driving retail and awareness to those channels, but also that you know that you're making money up front so you can reinvest that to buy more media. The more media you buy, the more awareness you get, the happier your retailers are, and the happier you are because there's a return on investment that you're getting by the product you're selling right then and there. And then you own that relationship with that consumer. You can retarget them, you can remarket to them. And as you know, at retail and Amazon and places like that, they own that consumer. It's not bad, nor it's not good, it's not bad. It's just a decision you have to make as a business. And having that awareness at these retail channels is fantastic, makes you real. Television makes you real. But at the end of the day, you want to have that relationship with that customer as much as you can. That's what's really, really important. So really, the answer is create a unique offer that allows you to offer something different than your other channels of distribution. Understand what your performance metrics are and your return on investment so you can reinvest. That's the difference there. So, into your point was, how does it optimize media spend? Well, that's how you optimize media spend. You got to get a return on investment now so you can reinvest and get more media out there, okay? Which is going to support all your other channels. Here's a question from Nancy. She says, we launched our product online and we're successful. What can we expect with TV in terms of growing the business? Well, Nancy, that's a great question because we get that question answered all the time. We have a lot of clients that come to us with this, and they say, we've launched this on digital. We've been very successful, but now we want to take the next level and scale. And is TV the right thing? And what can we expect on television? So if you listen to the last answer, what you can expect specifically is credibility. That's one thing you're going to get right out of the bat of television, is credibility. We have seen so many times when clients come to us and say, hey, we got this great product. We've made millions and millions and been very successful in digital, but we want to take it to the next level. Why do they want to take it to the next level? They might have investors. They might be VC backed, which those companies are looking for growth. And if you have growth, then you have value to your company. So you have to get outside of digital. And what happens is they hit a certain point, and it may be, like I said, it may be tens of millions of dollars. But for a lot of companies, they're not in business for tens of millions of dollars. They're in business for a lot more money, a lot more valuation, a lot more, larger business aspirations. So what happens is you get to a point with your digital where you keep spending money more and more, it gets more expensive, and you keep hitting the same people over and over and over again. And by the time you keep spending more money to do that, and it gets more expensive to do that, that affects your bottom line. So you got to think outside of that. So that's what television does. It gets you outside of that audience that you have not penetrated, or you have, burdened them or bludgeoned them with your message. Getting outside of that. Once you're outside of that on television, now you're really talking about scaling your business. Now you're talking about giving yourself the ability and the visibility and the brand awareness to go to a retailer. You're giving yourself the ability to acquire more customers, so you have that direct relationship, so you can build your business, not just on that one product, but all your other offerings, because now that cost per customer acquisition cost gets amortized over how many other products you can sell them and how long is that lifetime value to that consumer. So television brings such a different level when it comes to scaling, and it's very, very important. The great thing about digital is you can get a lot of great learnings. You can get your infrastructure in the back end put together. You can understand what creative has been working. Not necessarily can you say your digital creative is going to transfer to television, but there are fundamental things that you can do in television that you can do in digital that are going to transfer. But it gives, digital gives you the idea to find out, what's your price point? Where is that consumer comfortable? How much ability do you have to get your average order value up by different offerings? Where's the breakage in that offering? And understanding those and moving it to television, you have such a leg up. So you have a leg up on back-end information, but now you have that mountain to climb with the scaling of television and figuring out what it is you can spend to get that consumer to scale that message, and then to be able to go to that retailer and say, look, this is what we're doing on television. And they're gonna go, that's fantastic. Because the mindset of a retailer is this, and I've heard this point blank from Costco, from Walmart, even from Amazon, is that if you can drive a consumer to their marketplace, like Amazon, or their brick and mortar, and they're in the store to pick up your product, the chances of them picking up something else while they're in there is extremely high. And that's what they want. They want that customer to come in for that $59 Viviscal product and then walk out with $120 worth of other beauty and cosmetics or whatever it is. But that's good for the retailers because they came in for one thing and they bought other things. That's the mindset. Is how many more people can we get into that store looking for that product? They're going to buy other things, right? So television does that better than anything. And, I wanted to get into a little bit of why I feel so passionately about that and why it's important is because I can't tell you how many times that we have heard, well, is anybody watching television? Are people just doing connected television? Listen, Connected television is growing. That's again, that's not theory, that's fact. But that doesn't necessarily mean you can sell there based on what you're doing on television, based on what you're doing on digital. That is a totally different mindset of that consumer. And you might have to think about doing commercials on connected television just for awareness and maybe some return on investment. Not much. It just hasn't been that way because the psychology of that person is to opt out of something real quick if they don't like it. That's a challenge. That's a big deal. So, and then they go back to television. They go, well, you know, nobody's watching TV or this or that. You know, that is such a myth, and it's frustrating that we hear that. And I'm not here to sell television just because we do it. I'm here to tell you the facts, and the reality of it is that there's so many benefits to television that drives other channels. And television can be a cash positive business if you have the right financial feasibility model in place. And then it grows other channels. And again, if you can be seen by hundreds of millions of eyes versus just a specific on digital and specific on connected, wouldn't you do that? You would if it made sense financially. And that's what television can do, provided you have all those financials put together ahead of time, and you can do that. So thank you, Mark. That was a good mention. That was a good show. Thank you very much. We appreciate that. Let's see. We only have 10 minutes. Can we get into questions? Answering them now. Okay, gotcha. That was Sanita. But if you have any, leave before Kent finishes answering the question. That's us. Please do not stop. Has cost for TV production gone down since professional production software has gone more prosumer? That's a good question, Mark. So technically, depending on what you're trying to do. So let me give you a good example. When we work on a Nugenix commercial, and we're working with Frank Thomas, and we're working with a lot of actors, and we're working on very specific scripts and things like that, there's a part of that where you're spending money up front to do that, but you're spending on professionals, because for someone like Frank, you only have him for a certain amount of time. And we're trying to accomplish a lot of things in that campaign. We're doing digital assets. We're doing television assets. The consumer's mind still hasn't changed to production value. As a matter of fact, there was an article last month in Media Post and talking about connected television consumer, and they expect higher production values. That's something that is expected. And so that's an interesting thing. So the aspect of, you know, you talked about prosumer. So let's say you're going to do a IGTV ad or a stories ad. I can do that on my phone. That goes back to it being contextual to the platform. So if I had a vlogger, or if I had somebody that I wanted to make an ad on a swipe up on IGTV or Facebook or something like that, and we are saying, hey, I'm here on set, I want to tell you about this great product, that's totally okay. And that is back to conceptual to the platform. So the cost of that was hardly anything, but that doesn't transfer everywhere. So you have to think about, you can save money with production specifically to what you're doing and where you're doing it. But when it comes to television, it's about getting the highest quality with the most amount of assets. There was a time when you'd go to a television shoot, we would do a television shoot, and we were trying to shoot one 30-second commercial, or one 60-second commercial, or one 30-minute infomercial. Well, that's not the case anymore. The minute you have that equipment there, you want to accomplish as many assets as possible. So you want to do it at the highest quality. So yes, production costs have gone down depending on what you're doing, where you're doing it. And no, it hasn't, because you're trying to get the highest quality for the most amount of assets that makes the most sense financially. So if you look at it that way, yeah, costs have gone down from a high professional standpoint because you're getting so many more assets. So I hope you don't think that's a convoluted answer, but it's the facts. And if you're working, let me tell you this, if you're working with a big brand, like we have the opportunity to work with, Fortune 500 companies, there's too much at stake to make something that doesn't look as highest quality as possible. But if there's a company that's growing on digital and when it gets to television, you have some leeway. You just got to think about it differently. And the tools you're going to use and the experience and expertise you're going to use has everything to do with production costs. So that was time for our last answer. Let's see, Tom, thank you. Okay, Tom, we will contact, we will have somebody contact you. Thank you, Tom, appreciate that. And Sanita, you're welcome, Sanita. And Mark, I hope that was helpful for you. So I'm glad you all chimed in. Would love to have these open conversations about, the realities, the myths, the possibilities, and to have these conversations and to bring value. That's the reason why we do these Thought Leader Thursday webinars, to bring you value, to help you think about what it is that you're trying to accomplish. And if you can come into a conversation more educated, the better it is for you, the better it is for us, or the better it is for whoever you're doing business with. So I'm going to chime off right now, but remember, click the link and join us in our next webinar when we talk about, not being shy about talking about the story of your business and how that can actually work in your favor. Even if you don't see it or don't feel it, the consumer will understand because it's authentic. It's a really exciting interview. And I hope this was helpful and informative to all of you. And we look forward to seeing you on our next Thought Leader Thursday webinar series. Again, thank you.
And